Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video, I have already discussed about some of the input field, that means some of the Django library input field as a full name, the date of birth and the email. So now in this video, I want to discuss about some of the another input field. So how can working with this in this video, I will show you that things with a live example. So for doing this, first of all, I want to change some of the form. Like here into the form, I have already discussed about that name, the DB and the email, right? So now I want to change it. Like I just simply remove it from here. And now here I want to define some of the another input field as a Boolean field. So I just simply define as a Boolean, B-O-O-L-E-A-N. I just take one of the variable first as a Boolean field. Okay, I just take one of the variable and then with our Django forms. So with our Django forms, I want to access one of the another type as a Boolean field. I just simply define as a Boolean field type. Okay, friend. So now if you click as a save all, I just click as a save all and now go to our page and refresh it. Now you can see it's now showing one of the check marks. So if you select it, so then it should be as a true. So that means it should be returned some of the value as a true. And if you mark that as a uncheck mark, then it should be returned some of the value as a false. Okay, so now I want to do when you select as a check mark, then here I want to visible this our return that value. So here I want to visible it. So if you want to visible it, then you have to go to our form HTML. And into the form HTML, like there is actually our form and there is our view, right? So into the view area, I want to update it. So here right now, I don't need this. I have already discussed about that things with you, how can get all the data with the clean data. So now I want to do that work again. So I just simply remove it. So in particular, that position, I just simply define as a decision. Okay, into the decision, I just simply define as update. Okay, our update. And here I want to update our field name. So our field variable I have defined in our form area. So I have defined as a Boolean field, right? So here I have already created one of the class as our user class, and in particular that position I have already loaded our user class, right? So, and also I created one of the object, our requested data. So now I want to visible it into this our condition area. So here I define our field name. Okay, and after that here I also want to define that things with our, I want to get all the data from our forms, right? So here from here I want to get our this form Boolean data. So if you want to get it, as I told you, there have also another method as a clean data. So with this clean data we can actually get it. So in particular that position, our this form, that means our new form, because here I have already defined our post all that request data and take the things with this variable. So now with this, okay, with this I want to define our method as a cleaned, okay, clean underscore data. So I just simply define as a clean data, and in particular that area we have to define our field. So our field as a Boolean field variable. So now I want to simply pass it. Okay, and also I take our another key as a form submit key. So with this form submit key, I want to visible it in our form index page. So now go to our form index page. So into the form index. So here right now we don't need this. Okay, I just simply remove it from here. So I just simply remove it, and I have also defined our key. In particular that position I want to display our this form data. That means here I have defined as a form, that means our Boolean field. So in particular that position I just simply define as a Boolean field. Okay, and also there is our submit. So I just change that name as a Boolean. Okay, I just name it as a Boolean. So now if you click as a save all, I just click as a save all and now refresh it. Now select as a this one, click as a submit. Yes, now you can see it's now perfectly returned this value as a true. So as I told you, if you mark as a check mark, then it should be returning value as a true, rather than if you uncheck mark it, then it should be returning this value as a false. So if you unmark it and if you click as a submit, now you can see it's now showing as a this is actually the required. So here, as I told you before, if you want to make that things as a unrequired, then you have to define that as a one of the attribute with the required attribute, and you have to make that things as a false, right? So by default that is actually the true. So if you want to change it, like here, that is our form, into the form, that is our Boolean field type, right? So here I just make the things as a required. Okay, required, and by default that is actually the true. So now I want to make the things as a false. So I just name it as a false. Okay, so I just make the things as a false right now. Now click as a save all. Now refresh this page, and now I want to do I don't want to check mark it. Click as a submit. Yeah, you can see it's now showing as a false. And if you select it, click as a submit, then it should be returned the value as a true. And also if you want to define some of the character limit, then you can also define some of the character lengths, like here, after this. Okay, after this I want to take another variable and I just name it as a character. Okay, character underscore field, and then I just define with the form. Into the forms I define our character field type. Okay, I just define our character field type, and into the character field type I want to define some of the maximum length. Okay, I just define as a maximum length. For this one I define maximum length will be as a 15. Okay, and also you can define that minimum length. So I just simply define as a minimum underscore length. So I just simply define minimum length for the 5. Okay, so this type of if you want to display this type of length, you can also define some of the maximum length and the minimum length into the attribute area. Like here, if you now click as a save all, and now if you refresh it, now you can see there is actually the character field. So here if you want to display this value, like here we have to then update it. Go to our view. Into the view I have defined that boolean field, right? So better I want to actually change it. I want to make the things as the same name, then it should be better for display all that example. Like here I define that field, so better I want to change that variable name as a field. I have already discussed about that things with you. So right now I want to make the things as a comment out. So now I want to working with this field. So I just simply defining it. So here I define that field, and here in our clean data I define as a field. So now we have to also defining it in our form HTML as a field. So before that was actually boolean field, so now I define as a field. Okay, perfect. So better I define as a field. So it shall be actually helpful, because of all we will work a lot of the examples. So every example, if you want to visible it, you can visible it into the field area. So here I have printed with this field. So now we don't need to update it every time. For the reasons here I have updated it. Okay, so now I want to click as a save all. Click as a save all. Check out our command line. Everything is great. So now here if you refresh it again, now I just put some of the length. Click as a submit. Now you can see it's now showing our this field name, and here if you define that tree, click as a submit. Now you can see it's now showing our this validation as a please length text as a 5 character. So here I have defined some of the minimum length and the maximum length, right? So our maximum length will be as a 15, and the minimum length I have defined that 5. So for the reasons here, if you define as a 3, then it will be display this type of one of the validation. And also I defined that maximum length I have defined as a 15, right? So right now I want to define some of the 15 character. You can see you cannot actually added the more than the 50 character in particular this input field area. So I hope you can well understand about it. So here if you want to define some of the character limit, then you can define this character limit with this maximum length, and if you want to display some of the minimum length, then you can define that things with this. And then also if you want to define some of the choose field, like in HTML we define as a option, that means the select. Into the select we define some of the option value, right? So if you want to do this work in Django, you can defining it better. I want to make the things as a comment. Okay, and after that I take one of the variable and just name it as a field. Okay, I just name it as a field, and then the forms. So with these forms I define our type as a choose field. Okay, choose field. So I just simply define as a choose field, and into the choose field what exactly you have to pass. You have to pass that value, and also you have to pass some of that option name, right? So here if you want to select it, then you have to define as a choose. So they have one of the attribute as a choose, and with this choose you can defining it. With this choose, first of all here you have to define your value. So I just simply define that value as a 1, and after that the name. So here I define that name as a fast. Okay, I just name it as a fast. So here if you want to add that multiple, then you can also defining it better. I just copy it, and then after that there's 1 and the 3. That means that should be as a 2 and that will be as a 3. I just simply define as a second or 2. Okay, and then I just simply define as a 3. So I just simply define as a 3. So here I define that value. So this will be actually the value. So in HTML, as I told you, into the select, we define that option. Into the option, we define some of the value, and then we define some of the name, right? So here I define that value as a 1, as a fast on name, 2 value. I just simply define as a 2 name and the 3 name. So now if you click as a save all, I just click the save all. Now go here, refresh it. Now you can see there is actually the field, and now there is our fast 1, there is a 2, and there is a 3. And also here I defined some of the value, like for the fast I have defined that value as a 1, for the 2 I defined that value as a 2, and for the 3 I defined that value as a 3, right? So now I want to check it, like I just simply define as a fast, click as a submit. Now you can see it's now showing as a field value as a 1. So if you select as a 2, it's showing as a 2. If you click as a 3, it's now showing as a 3. So for the reasons here I have defined that all value. So that is actually all value, right? So if you also want to make the things like for the first one, that will be some of the option as a select option, and by default this select option will be as a true. For the reasons here you cannot insert it. So here I want to defining it. So here if you want to defining it, you have to do better. I just simply copy and paste it. And first of all, I just make the things as a empty, and for the empty automatically it will be as a true. So for the reasons you cannot actually add this data. So here I define some of the name. So I just name it as a select. Okay, select option. So this type of one of the text it will be visible. Now let's check this out. I just click as a save all. Now refresh it. Now you can see there is actually our select option. So when you select as an option, if you click as a submit, here you can see it's now showing as a please select an item on the list. So because of all here I didn't define any value, right? So because of all here I didn't define any value, so when it will be as a empty, so by default in Django this attribute will be as a true. Okay, so for the reasons it's now, you can see it's now actually required. So for the reasons it's now required, for the reasons it's now showing this type of one of the message. So for better understand, if you go to that page source file, into the source file, here you can see there is actually the select option, there is a value as a 1, value 2 and value 3. So that is actually the HTML code as I told you before. So right now I think it should be very much clear to you. And also here if you want to make the things as a radio box, so right now there is actually our select from, right? So here if you want to load your radio box, then how can do that work? So right now, like here I want to make the things as a comment out again, and I take another variable. And I just name it as a field. It will be just like that same. I just simply define as a form. Sorry. So I just take one of the variable as a field, and then into the form. Okay, into the forms I define our choose field. Okay, I just simply define as the choose field, and into the choose field we have to pass our attribute. We have to pass attribute as a chooses. Okay, chooses, and then we have to pass our chooses all that value. So for that chooses all that value we have to define some of the value. So like here I define one of the variable as a chooses. Okay, I just simply define all the variable as a chooses, and then here I want to define just like our value and the name. So I just simply defining it. So first of all I just simply define the value as a, and also I define that name will be as a. For education purpose I'm using it, and also I want to take another one. Better copy it and copy it. So it will be like as a B. Okay, I just simply define, I just simply define as a B, the B, and that will be as a C and the C. Okay, so I just take it all that variable and take the things with this our choose, that means this variable. So now here I have to pass it. So I just simply pass it. Now we know our widgets area, that means in our widgets attribute I want to defining it. So I just simply define the widgets, widget. Okay, widget. Into the widget I just simply define the forms, and into the forms I make the things as a type. So into the forms type I want to use as a radio select. So I just simply define as a radio select. Okay, I just simply define as a radio select. So now that's all you have to do. So now if you click as a save all, I just click on the save all, and now go here, refresh it. So maybe they have some of the error. Let's check this out. And now here you can see it's now showing some of the error as a form is not defined. It's spelling mistake. Here you can see there's actually the spelling mistake. It should be as a form, FORMS. Okay, so that is actually the forms. Perfect. Now let's check this out again. Click as a save all. Yeah, it's now perfectly running. Now refresh it again. Yes, perfect. Now you can see it's now become our this value. So for this one I have defined that value as a, and for this our name actually visible as a. So that is a B and that is a C. So if you select this one, click as a submit. Now you can see it's now showing our value as a. Select this one, value as a B. So that is the value I have defined. So here I have defined that value as a. So whatever the things you defining it on here, I just simply define as a value as a apple. Okay, right now I just simply define as apple. Now it should be very much clear to you. Now I refresh it again. Now I select as a, submit it. Now you can see it's now value actually apple. Okay, friend. So that's how you can actually use your choose field, and also if you want to add some of the radio button, then you can add that radio button with this input field area. So that is actually the attribute. So I think you can well understand about it. So friend, now everything is actually very much basic things. So literally, as I told you, we will create 3 different type of projects. So when we'll create this project, then all that our basic fundamental will be needed. So make that sure you learn all that main code things. It will help you a lot. See you in our next video. I want to discuss about that form validation. How you can define some of the validation in your form. In our next video, I will show you that things with a live example. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.